Watch this for 30 minutes and you'll be dangerously smart. I'm not talking about book smart. I'm not talking about school smart. I'm talking about the kind of smart that makes people nervous when you walk into a room. The kind of smart that lets you see what people are really doing behind what they're saying. The kind of smart that means you can't be lied to, manipulated, or controlled anymore. Most people go through life half asleep. They take things at face value. They believe what people tell them. Music, they think the world operates the way they were taught it operates. They spend decades being confused about music, why things don't work out the way they're supposed to. And the reason is simple. They're missing 7 pieces of information, 7 mental shifts that change how you see everything. And once these shifts happen in your brain, you become a completely different, music, person. You see patterns other people miss. You predict outcomes other people can't see coming. You understand motivations that other people are completely blind, music, to. And this makes you dangerous. Not in a violent way. Dangerous in the way that means you can't be played. You can't be fooled. You can't be controlled by the same tactics that work on everyone else. And the people who make their living controlling others, they hate when someone becomes this kind of smart because it means their tricks don't work anymore. Now, I need to warn you about something, music, before we go further. These 7 shifts are permanent. Once you see what I'm about to show you, music, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to being naive. You can't pretend you don't know how things actually work. Music, and that knowledge comes with a cost. You're going to feel more isolated. You're going to feel like you're speaking a different language than most people. You're going to see things that make you uncomfortable and you can't unknow them. So, if you want to stay innocent, music, if you want to keep believing that people are fundamentally good and the world is fundamentally fair, stop watching now. Go back, music, to whatever you were doing. But if you're ready to see clearly, if you're ready to understand how the game actually works, keep watching because in the next 30 minutes, your brain is going to change. And by the end, you'll be dangerously smart. Let's start with the first shift. This is the foundation. Everything else builds on this. And this is the one most people resist the hardest because it destroys something they desperately, music, want to believe. Here it is. People don't mean what they say. They just don't. And, music, I don't mean they're all liars. I mean that words are the least reliable indicator of, music, what someone actually thinks, feels, or intends to do. Words are performance. Music, words are what people use to manage your perception of them. Words are what people say to, music, get what they want in that moment. But words are almost never the truth. Think about how many times someone told you they'd do, music, something and didn't do it. How many times someone said they cared about you and then disappeared. How many times someone promised to change and stayed exactly the same. Were they lying when they said it? Maybe. But more likely they meant it in that moment. They felt it in that moment. And then the moment passed and the feeling passed and the words became meaningless. Because words are cheap. Words cost nothing. You can say anything. You can promise anything. And most people do. They say whatever makes them look good or gets them what they want or makes the other person stop bothering them. Machiavelli understood this. 500 years ago he wrote that men are so simple and, music, so ready to obey present necessities that he who deceives will always find someone ready to be deceived. What he meant, music, is that people want to believe words. They want to believe promises. They want to believe that when someone says something they mean it. And manipulators know this. So they use words to control you. They tell you what you want to hear. Music, they make promises they have no intention of keeping. And it works because most people take words at face value. Most, music, people assume that if someone said it, they must mean it. But that's not how the world works. So what changes when, music, you make this first shift? You stop listening to what people say and start watching what they do. You stop being, music, impressed by promises and start paying attention to patterns. Someone says they'll call you back. Do they? Someone says they value you. Do their actions reflect that? Someone, music, says they're going to change. Do they actually change? Or do they just keep saying they're, music, going to change? When you stop believing words and start believing behavior, everything becomes, music, clear. You're not confused anymore. You're not wondering why someone who says they care keeps hurting you. You see it. They don't care. Their words say one thing. Their actions say another. And actions are always the truth. But here's what most people don't realize. Here's the part that makes this shift so powerful. Once you stop believing words, you become very hard to manipulate because most manipulation is verbal. It's music, promises, it's explanations, it's justifications, it's someone talking their way out of accountability. And if you don't believe the words, the manipulation doesn't work. You just look at the pattern. You look at what they actually do and you make your music decision based on that. This infuriates manipulators because they're used to people accepting their music explanations. They're used to words working. And when they meet someone who only believes behavior, they have no power. They can talk all they want. It doesn't matter. You're watching what they do. And what they do, music, tells you everything you need to know. So that's the first shift. People don't mean what they say. Watch behavior, not words. Music, and once you truly internalize this, once you stop taking anyone at their word and start observing their patterns, you've taken the first step toward music, becoming dangerously smart. But knowing that people don't mean what they say isn't enough. Because you'll still be confused, music, about why they do what they do. Why do people make promises they don't keep? Why do people, music, say one thing and do another? Why do people hurt the people they claim to love? And that brings us to the second shift, music, the one that explains all human behavior once you see it. And this one is even harder to accept than the first. Here's the second shift. Everyone operates from self-interest. Everyone, no exceptions. And before you get defensive, before you start listing all the selfless things you've done or people you know who are genuinely good, hear me out. I'm not saying people are evil. I'm not saying people don't care about others. I'm saying that at the core of every single decision every person makes, there's a calculation. What's in this for me? Even when people are being generous, even when people are being kind, even when people are sacrificing, there's something they're getting out of it. Maybe it's feeling good about themselves, maybe it's building a reputation, maybe it's avoiding guilt, maybe it's creating an obligation, but there's always something, always. And this isn't a criticism. This is just how humans work. We're wired for survival. And survival means prioritizing our own needs. Even when we help others, we're doing it because it serves us in some way. Maybe it serves our values. Maybe it serves our self-image. Music, maybe it serves our long-term interests. But it serves us. And once you see this, once you really see this, everything makes sense. People aren't confusing anymore. Music, they're predictable. Because if you can figure out what someone's self-interest is, you can predict what they'll do every time. Think about someone in your life who disappointed, music, you. Someone who let you down. Someone who chose themselves over you. Were you surprised? Were you hurt? Did you think they cared about you more than they actually did? Music. Now go back and look at that situation through the lens of self-interest. What did they have to gain by choosing you? What did they have to lose by choosing themselves? When you run the math, music, their decision makes perfect sense. They did what was best for them. They always do. Everyone always does. And the reason you were hurt is because you, music, thought they would choose you. But why would they? What was in it for them? If the answer is nothing, then, music, of course they didn't choose you. This isn't personal. This is just how humans operate. Music. Machiavelli wrote that men never do good unless necessity drives them to it. What he meant is that people don't act morally because morality is important to them. They act morally when, music, it benefits them to act morally. When there's social pressure, when there's legal consequences, music, when their reputation is on the line, but when nobody's watching, when there's no consequences, when they can get away with it. Most people will do what serves them, not what's right. And this isn't because people are bad. It's because people are human and humans are self-interested. Music, that's not a bug. That's a feature. That's survival. So, what changes when you make this second shift? You stop being surprised by people. You stop being hurt by betrayal because betrayal isn't personal. It's just someone choosing their own interest over, music, yours. And why wouldn't they? You stop expecting people to sacrifice for you unless you've made it worth, music, their while. You stop thinking loyalty is automatic. You understand that loyalty exists when it serves both parties. And the moment, music, it stops serving one party, the loyalty ends. This sounds cynical. This sounds, music, dark. But it's just realistic. And once you operate from this understanding, you make better decisions. You stop trusting people who have no reason to be trustworthy. You stop being shocked when people choose themselves. You start building relationships based on mutual benefit instead of hope. And here's the powerful part. When you understand that everyone operates from self-interest, including you, music, you stop feeling guilty about prioritizing yourself. You stop apologizing for having boundaries. You stop sacrificing yourself for people who wouldn't do the same for you. Because you realize that self-interest isn't selfish. It's survival. And the people who are winning, the people who are thriving, they understood this a long time ago. They're not sitting, music, around wondering why people don't appreciate their sacrifices. They're making strategic decisions based on what serves them, and they're not apologizing for it because they know everyone else is doing the same thing. Music, they're just honest about it. So that's the second shift. Everyone operates from self-interest. Music, once you see this, people make sense, behavior makes sense, and you stop being confused about why people do what they do. But understanding, music, self-interest still leaves you vulnerable. Because you might think, okay, I'll just work harder than everyone else. I'll be better than everyone else. I'll learn what I deserve. And that brings us to the third shift. The one that, music, destroys the fairy tale you were told as a child. The one that makes you realize the game is rigged. And once you see this, music, you can't go back to believing in merit or justice or fairness. Here it is. Fairness is a lie. They tell children. The world is not fair. The world has never, music, been fair. The world will never be fair. And the people who succeed are not the, music, people who deserve it most. They're the people who understand how to win in an unfair system. Think about every, music, time you've seen someone less qualified get promoted over someone more qualified. Music, every time you've seen someone with connection succeed while someone with talent struggled. Music, every time you've seen hard work go unrewarded while luck got celebrated. You probably thought that was an exception. That was a fluke. That was unfair. Music, and eventually fairness would win out. But it's not an exception. It's the rule. The world doesn't reward hard work. It rewards leverage. It rewards timing. It rewards being in the right place with the right people. And sometimes it rewards being ruthless enough to take what, music, you want. Machiavelli understood this completely. He wrote that how we live is so different from how we ought to, music, live, that he who abandons what is done for what ought to be done will rather learn to bring about his own ruin than his preservation. What he's saying is that if you play by the rules of how things should work instead of, music, how things actually work, you lose. The people who sit around saying this isn't fair, this isn't right, this isn't, music, how it should be. Those people stay stuck because they're waiting for the world to be fair. They're waiting for merit to matter. Music, they're waiting for hard work to be enough. And while they're waiting, other people, music, are playing the actual game, the game of leverage, the game of relationships, the game of timing and opportunity, and sometimes taking what they want without asking permission. Think about how much energy you've wasted being angry about unfairness. About how someone else got something you deserved. About how the system is broken, about how things should be different. All that energy, all that anger, all that resentment, it changed nothing. The system doesn't care that you think it's unfair. The system rewards the people who understand how it actually works, not how it should work, how it does work. And once you make this shift, once you stop expecting fairness and start expecting reality, you can finally start winning because you're not handicapping yourself with should anymore. You're not playing by rules that don't exist. You're looking at what actually gets rewarded and you're, music, doing that. So what changes when you make this third shift? You stop waiting for things to be fair. You stop expecting your hard work to speak for itself. You stop thinking that being good at your job is enough. Music, you understand that you need leverage, you need visibility, you need relationships, you need timing, and sometimes you need to be willing to do things that other people think are unfair, not illegal, not immoral, but strategic. Music, taking credit for your work instead of hoping someone notices. Building relationships with decision makers instead of hoping merit is enough. Leaving a job that doesn't value you instead of hoping loyalty gets rewarded. Playing the game that actually, music, exists instead of the game you wish existed. And here's what nobody tells you. The people at the top, the people with money and power and influence, they all know the world isn't fair. They've always known. That's why they win. They're not playing by the rules of fairness. They're playing by the rules of reality. And reality is ruthless. Reality rewards leverage. Reality rewards being in the right place at, music, the right time with the right people. Reality rewards taking opportunities that other people are too principled, music, to take. And you can sit there and call that unfair. You can sit there and say that's not how it should be. Or you can accept that's how it is and start playing the game that actually exists. Because complaining about unfairness doesn't change anything. But understanding how to win in an unfair system changes everything. So that's the third shift. Fairness is a lie. The world rewards leverage, timing, and ruthlessness, not merit. And once you accept this, once you really accept this, you stop wasting energy on resentment and start using that energy to position yourself. But even understanding that, music, the world is unfair, doesn't fully prepare you for what comes next. Because you might think, okay, the world, music, is unfair, but at least everyone is playing by the same basic rules. At least we all have to follow the laws. At least we all have the same constraints. And that, music, brings us to the fourth shift. The one that shows you that not only is the world unfair, music, but different people are playing completely different games. Here it is. The rules don't apply to everyone. Music, there are rules for regular people. And there are rules for powerful people. And they're not the same rules. Regular people have to follow the rules. They have to pay their taxes. They have to show up on time. They have to be polite. They have to ask permission. They have to wait their turn. They get fired if they break the rules. They get arrested if they break the law. The system enforces rules on regular people constantly. But powerful people, different story. Powerful people break rules all the time. They cut corners. They ignore regulations. They bend laws. They make promises they don't keep. And nothing happens to them. Because the rules exist to control the powerless, not to constrain the powerful. Think about every scandal you've ever seen. Wealthy people cheating on taxes. Politicians lying under oath. CEOs breaking labor laws. What happened to them? Really, what actually happened? Maybe they paid a fine that was a fraction of what they gained. Maybe they got a slap on the wrist. Music, maybe nothing at all. Because the system is designed to punish people who can't afford good lawyers, people who don't have connections, music, people who don't have leverage. But if you have money, if you have power, if you have the right relationships, the rules become suggestions, music, things you can work around, things you can negotiate, things you can ignore, if the benefit is worth the risk. Machiavelli wrote that a wise, music, prince cannot and should not keep his word when such observance may be turned against him and when the reasons that caused him to pledge it no longer exist. What he's saying is that powerful people don't follow rules when those rules stop serving them. They follow rules when it benefits them. They break rules when it benefits them and they have the resources to get away with it. This isn't a conspiracy. This isn't a music secret. This is just how power works. The people with power write the rules and they write them in a way that constrains everyone else while giving themselves loopholes always. Every system, every society, every structure. So what changes when you make this fourth shift? You stop, music, handicapping yourself with rules that powerful people ignore. You stop being the only person playing fair in a game where nobody else is playing, music, fair. You stop thinking that following all the rules is what separates you from bad people. Because the people winning aren't following all the rules. They're following the rules that matter. The ones that have real consequences, and they're bending or breaking the ones that don't. This doesn't mean become a criminal. This means stop being naive about what game you're actually in. Stop thinking that, music, being a rule follower makes you virtuous. It just makes you controllable. And here's the dangerous part of this shift. Music, once you see that the rules don't apply equally, you have to decide. Do you keep following rules that are handicapping you while everyone else is cutting corners? Or do you start being strategic, music, about which rules you follow and which rules you bend? Most people can't handle this question. They want to, music, believe they're good people and good people follow rules. But Machiavelli would tell, music, you that good people finish last. Not because being good is wrong, but because playing by rules that nobody else is following is stupid. The rules exist to control, music, you, not to create fairness, not to ensure justice, to control you. And once you see that, you can't go back to blindly following them. So that's the fourth shift. The rules don't apply to everyone. Powerful people break rules constantly and face no consequences. And once you see this, you realize that following every rule is just volunteering to be controlled. But understanding that the game has different rules for different people still doesn't prepare you for the next shift. Because even if you know the world is unfair and the rules are rigged, you might still think you can trust the people close to you. You might think you know who your real friends are. You might think you can tell who's on your side and who isn't. And that brings us to the fifth shift. The one that makes you question everyone. Here it is. Your enemies pretend to be friends. The people who are going to hurt you aren't strangers. Music, they're not obvious enemies. They're people who smile at you. People who tell you they have your back. People who act like they care. Music, because that's how betrayal works. You can't be betrayed by an enemy. Music, you can only be betrayed by someone you trusted. And the people who want to take from you, compete with you, undermine you. They know this. So they get close. Music, they act friendly. They learn your weaknesses. They wait for the right moment. And then they strike. And you never saw it coming because you thought they were on your team. Think about every time you've been backstabbed. Music, every time someone you trusted turned on you. Were they obvious enemies before that? No. They were friends. Music, they were colleagues. They were people you helped. People you trusted. People you thought were loyal. And then they weren't. And you were shocked because you didn't see it coming. But here's the thing. The signs were always there. Music, you just didn't want to see them. Because seeing them would mean admitting that someone you trusted was actually a threat. And most people would rather stay blind, music, than accept that truth. But staying blind doesn't protect you. It just makes you an easier target. Machiavelli wrote that men are so simple that the deceiver will always find someone ready to be deceived. Music, what he meant is that people want to trust. They want to believe that their friends are really their friends. They want to believe that people are being honest with them. Music, and deceivers know this. So, they use your trust against you. They get close to you. They learn your secrets. They find out what you value. They figure out your weaknesses. Music, and then they use all of that information to either take from you or compete, music, with you or sabotage you. And the whole time they're smiling. The whole time they're acting like they're your friend because that's, music, the disguise that works. So, what changes when you make this fifth shift? You stop trusting people just because they're nice to you. You stop assuming that someone who smiles at you is on your side. You start watching for patterns. Does this person celebrate your wins or do they seem bothered by them? Music, does this person support you when it costs them nothing or do they support you when it's inconvenient? Does this person, music, keep your secrets or do they somehow always end up sharing information that hurts you? When you stop, music, taking friendliness at face value and start watching for actual loyalty, you see who's real and who's performing. Music, and most people are performing. And here's the hardest part of this shift. You realize that you can't actually trust most people. Not because everyone is evil, but because most people will choose themselves over you when it matters. Most people will smile at you and compete with you at the same time. Most people will be your friend until being your friend costs them something. And once you see this, you become very selective about who you trust, very selective about what information you share, very selective about who gets close to you because you understand that proximity is danger. The closer someone is, the more they can hurt you. And most people are not worthy of that proximity. Most people are friendly enemies, smiling while they wait for an opportunity. So that's the fifth shift. Your enemies pretend to be friends. The people who will betray you are the people who are close to you right now. And once you see this, you become very careful about who you let in. But even knowing that people around, music, you might be threats doesn't fully protect you because you might think, okay, I'll just be strong. I'll, music, be tough. I won't show weakness. And that brings us to the sixth shift. The one about what happens when you do show weakness. Music, and this one is brutal. Here it is. Weakness invites attack. The world tells you that being vulnerable, music, is brave, that showing your struggles makes you human. That asking for help is strength, and in a perfect world, music, maybe that would be true. But this isn't a perfect world. This is a world full of predators. And predators don't respect vulnerability. They exploit it. When you show weakness, you're not building connection. You're painting a target on yourself. You're showing people exactly where to hit you. You're giving them information about how to hurt you, manipulate you, or, music, control you. And some people, not all people, but some people will absolutely use that information against you. Think about a time you opened up to someone about a fear or an insecurity. And then, music, later, in an argument or a difficult moment, that exact thing got used against you. They knew it would hurt because you told them it would hurt. You gave them the weapon. You showed them where you're soft, and they filed that information, music, away until they needed it. This is what happens when you're vulnerable with the wrong people. Your honesty becomes ammunition. Your openness becomes weakness. Music, and weakness in a competitive world gets punished. Not because people are evil, but because people are strategic, and if they can gain an advantage by hitting you where you're weak, some of them will do it. Machiavelli wrote that it is, music, better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. What he meant is that people, music, respect strength more than they respect vulnerability. When people fear you, when people know that crossing you has consequences, they treat you carefully. They think twice before betraying you. Music, they don't test your boundaries. But when people think you're weak, when they think you won't, music, fight back, when they think you'll just absorb the hit and keep being nice, they have no reason to treat you well. Weakness invites disrespect. Music, weakness invites exploitation. Weakness invites attack. Not from everyone, but from enough people, music, that you need to be careful. So what changes when you make this sixth shift? You stop oversharing. You stop telling everyone your problems. You stop looking for sympathy. You understand that most people don't care about your struggles. They're either indifferent or they're filing the information away to use later. You become more guarded. You share your struggles only with people who have proven they won't use that information against you. And that's a very small group. For most people, you show strength. You show competence. You show that crossing you is a bad idea. Not because you're mean, but because you understand that in a world full of predators, looking like prey gets you eaten. And here's what this looks like in practice. You don't complain about your problems at work. You solve them quietly. You don't tell people about your insecurities. You work on them privately. You don't broadcast your failures. You learn from them in silence. Because every time you show weakness publicly, you're lowering your status. You're making yourself less valuable in other people's, music, eyes. You're giving competitors an advantage. You're making yourself a target. And the people who are winning, the people who are thriving, music, they understand this. They keep their struggles private. They show strength publicly. Not because they don't struggle, but because they know that showing struggle is dangerous. Music. So that's the sixth shift. Weakness invites attack. The world doesn't reward vulnerability, it punishes it. And once you see this, you become very careful about what you reveal and to whom. But even understanding all six of these shifts, even seeing clearly how the world actually works, music, there's still one more shift. The biggest one, the one that ties everything together. The one that determines whether you stay a victim of these realities, music, or become someone who uses these realities to win. And this is the shift that separates people who understand the game from people who play the game. Here it is. You're in a game whether you play or not. Some people think, music, that by refusing to play games, by refusing to be strategic, by refusing to compete, they're somehow above it all. Music, they're not playing dirty. They're not being manipulative. They're just being authentic and hoping that's enough. But here's the brutal truth. You're in the game, music, whether you choose to play or not. Other people are playing. Other people are being strategic. Other people are positioning themselves. Other people are building alliances and undermining competitors and taking opportunities. And if you're not doing those things, you're not staying neutral. You're losing. Because refusing to play doesn't, music, take you out of the game. It just makes you a piece instead of a player. Think about your workplace. Do you think the people getting, music, promoted are the ones who do the best work and hope someone notices? Or are they the people who make sure their work gets seen? Who build relationship? With decision makers, who position themselves, music, for opportunities, who make strategic moves. They're playing. And if you're not playing, you're the person they're playing, music, against. You're the person who gets passed over, the person who gets blindsided, the person who wonders why things never work out, even though, music, you did everything right according to the rules you think exist. But those aren't the actual rules. Music, the actual rules are be strategic or be used, play the game or be a piece in someone else's game. Machiavelli wrote that you must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. What he meant is that you need two types of intelligence. You need to see the game being played, the traps, the manipulation, the strategies. That's the fox. And you need to be strong enough, fierce enough, strategic enough to not be a victim of those traps. That's the lion. You can't just be smart. You can't just see what's happening. You have to be willing to fight back, to play your own game, to use the same strategies being used against you. Because if you just see the game but refuse to play, you're still losing. You're just losing with your eyes open. So what changes when you make this seventh shift? You stop pretending you're not in a competition. You stop acting like being nice and working hard is a strategy. You start being intentional. Music. You start thinking about how you're perceived, what relationships you're building, what opportunities you're positioning yourself for. You start playing chess while everyone else is playing, music, checkers. You think 3 moves ahead. You understand that every interaction is either building, music, your position or weakening it. You stop being passive. You stop waiting for things to happen to you. You start making things happen, not in an aggressive way, not in a fake way, but, music, in a strategic way. You understand that you're in a game and games have winners and losers, and refusing to play just means you're choosing to lose. And here's the most important part of this shift. Once you accept that you're in a game, you stop feeling guilty about playing strategically. You stop thinking that positioning yourself makes you a bad person. You stop apologizing, music, for prioritizing yourself because you realize everyone else is doing it. They're just not admitting it. They're playing the game while pretending they're, music, not playing. And that makes them liars. You're playing the game while being honest with yourself about what you're doing. And that makes you dangerous because you're not confused. Music, you're not conflicted. You see the board. You see the pieces. You see the moves. And you make your decisions based on what actually works, not on what you wish would work. So that's the seventh shift. You're in a game whether you, music, play or not. And refusing to play just means other people are playing you. Once you see this, once you really see this, you can't go back to being passive. You can't go back to hoping things work out. You have to become a player. You have to be strategic. You have to, music, think about the game you're in and how to win it. Because the alternative is spending your whole life wondering why everyone, music, else is getting ahead while you're stuck. And the answer is simple. They're playing, you're not. And games don't reward people who refuse to play. They reward people who play well. So now you have all 7 shifts. Music, let me put them together for you. People don't mean what they say. Watch behavior. Everyone operates from self-interest, including you. Fairness is a lie. The world rewards leverage. Music, the rules don't apply to everyone. Powerful people break them constantly. Your enemies pretend to be friends. Trust carefully. Weakness invites attack. Show strength. You're in a game whether you play or not, so play strategically. These 7 shifts happened in your brain over the last 30 minutes. You see the world differently now. You see people differently. You see yourself differently. And you can't go back to not knowing this. You can't go back to being naive. And here's what I need you to understand. This knowledge makes you lonely because you're going to look around and realize that most people don't see what you see. Most people are still operating from the lies. Music, they still think people mean what they say. They still think the world is fair. They still think following the rules is enough. They still think their friends are really their friends. They still think showing weakness builds connection. They, music, still think they're not in a game. And you can't explain this to them because they're not ready. They don't want to see it. They want to stay comfortable. They want to keep believing in the fairy tale. And if you try to wake them up, music, they'll call you cynical. They'll call you dark. They'll call you negative. Because seeing clearly looks like negativity to people who want to stay blind. Music, but you're not negative. You're realistic. You're not cynical. You're informed. You're not, music, dark. You're dangerous. And dangerous is exactly what you need to be. Music, because dangerous means you can't be lied to. You can't be manipulated. You can't, music, be controlled. You see the game, you see the players, you see the moves, and now you have a choice. Do you use this knowledge to protect yourself, or do you use it to win? Do you play defense, or do you play offense? Do you just avoid the traps? Or do you set some of your own? That's up to you. But what you can't do is go back to music, not knowing the shifts happened. Your brain changed. You're dangerously smart now. So here's my challenge to you. Look at your life right now, music, with these 7 shifts in mind. Who in your life says one thing and does another? Who in your life is operating purely from self-interest while, music, pretending to care about you? Where in your life are you expecting fairness that doesn't exist? What rules are, music, you following that everyone else is breaking? Who in your life is pretending to be a friend but is actually a competitor? Where are you showing weakness that's getting exploited? And what game are you in that you've been refusing to play? Answer these questions honestly, because the answers will show you exactly why you are where you are and what you need to change to get where you want to be. And if these 7 shifts happen for you, if you see the world differently now than you did 30 minutes, music, ago, write in the comments, I see it now. Let's see how many people here are ready to stop being pieces and start being players. Let's see how many people are ready to stop being naive and start being dangerous. Because the world doesn't need more, music, nice people. It needs more people who see clearly, who understand how things actually work, who are strategic, music, enough to win in a game that was rigged against them from the start. That's what being dangerously smart means. Music, and if you made it this far, you're one of us now. Welcome to Seeing Clearly. It's lonely, but it's powerful. And don't forget to keep watching the next video. It's important, much more than you imagine. See you there.